Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. We'll ignore all the clutter and chaos around me. There's a lot of rearranging going in the shop here. Let's focus on what's right here in front of us. This very cool and colorful Lego table. This is a great kids project. So if you got kids at the house, you want to get them involved in your builds or get them out in the shop, this is the project to do it on. They can do all of this cool coloring and painting. And let me tell you, this paint just pops and it just makes this table fun to look at. Now the top of the table can be made more than just a Lego table because the top uses these little Lego base plates, these 10 by 10 base plates, and they lift right out. So you could actually paint the top with some chalkboard paint and make it like a little doodling table as well. So just a cool kids center. I'm going to teach you how to make the basic table and you can take it from there.
Alright, the first thing we're going to do is cut two 6-foot 1x4 boards in half. I went ahead and clamped both of my boards together and made one cut to get the 4 pieces I needed. Next thing is we're going to take the 2 sets of 36-inch boards and we're going to glue and nail them together in an L shape. Once you've got 2 of the boards glued and nailed together in their L shape, you want to go ahead and repeat those steps for the second set of boards. Now that both sets of boards are glued and nailed together, we want to go ahead and put them together, creating a 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 box. And again, go ahead and glue and nail that together. Because the table saw blade doesn't raise up high enough on most table saws to cut through this 4 1/4 by 4 1/4 box that we just assembled, went ahead and took it over to the bandsaw and cut 4 8-inch legs out of this 36-inch assembly. Alright, once all 4 legs were cut on the bandsaw, I went ahead and drew lines 2 inches apart all the way around each leg, dividing it into 4 equal segments. This allowed me to bring it over to the table saw to cut a shallow 1/8-inch groove on those lines to simulate joints between the stacked blocks. Now I went ahead and set up a stop block to allow me to cut the lines on one end of the leg, and then I could flip it over to cut the lines on the other end of the leg. Once all 4 legs were done that way, I went ahead and repositioned the stop block to make the center cuts. Alright, with the legs done, we can go ahead and set them aside while we focus on the top. We're going to cut a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, I'm using birch here, into a square 20 1/8 by 20 1/8 part. Once we have the top cut out, we can go ahead and take one of the legs and lay it on all 4 corners of the top and trace out that leg. This will give us an outline where we need to drill and countersink our holes. Make sure that you drill and countersink the holes deep enough so that the head of your screws will sit below the surface. Once the holes are drilled and countersunk, go ahead and sand both the top and the legs. Alright, next thing we need to do is get a couple of pieces of 3/4 by 1.5 inch strips for the frame of the top. And if you're like me and don't have any 1x2s laying around, you can go ahead and rip a couple of strips down to 1.5 inches wide. Once you got your strips ripped down, then we want to go ahead and take them over to the router table, and I'm using an 1/8 inch bit here, and we're going to round over one side, both edges of one side of these strips.
Alright guys, for this Lego table, we want to make sure that it's safe for the kids. Now we're going to be painting it to give it some color, and just remember that the paint, once it's dry, it's kids safe, but we want to make sure that the rest of the table is safe as well. So we want to take any sharp edges and we want to sand those over and just smooth them out so there's no sharp edges left on the table. Now on the 4 frame pieces, the tabletop frame pieces that you saw me earlier round over, I took a 1/8 inch round over bit and I rounded over both sides, but now I want to go ahead and I want to knock down these bottom corners just a little bit so they're not so sharp, and I want to go ahead and I want to sand over, smooth everything up before I put the coat of paint on it.
Alright, well sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate, so I had to do some painting inside the shop. I went ahead and masked everything off, and I built a box fan with a filter to pull the overspray away and into the filter, and it worked very well, and I'll definitely use it again in the future. Alright, so I went ahead and taped off all 4 sections of each of the legs, and then I peeled the masking tape off on the areas that I wanted to paint the same color. And once that color dried, I went ahead and retaped it off and then peeled off the next section for the next color, and so on and so forth. Now I used 3 colors on the legs. I used a safety yellow, a safety red, and a royal blue. I really liked those different colors. Now the part that you don't see is once all of those 3 colors dried, I went ahead and retaped off all of the legs and painted the black within those shallow grooves, and that turned out to be quite a pain because the black wasn't getting into the grooves well enough, and then when I really tried to coat it on, it ran into the other colors. So I'd probably do something a little different if I built another one of these tables, and I have a couple of suggestions from viewers that I think would be a better option than what I did, and I'll tell you about it here coming up. So I was having problems with the red paint not coming out of the can, and when all else fails, go back and read the instructions.
Shake well before using.
Okay, I'm blaming that on the paint fumes.
Alright, well sometimes you got to step back and punt with a project, when things don't go just right. When I painted the legs for this Lego table, I started off by masking off each of the 4 sections on the legs, and then I peeled the tape off, paint a section, so on and so forth. And then once they were all painted, I went ahead and retaped everything except for the curves that were cut in here so I could paint the black in. And I tried to use, a small brush, and that wasn't working very well. It wasn't getting the black paint in. I've tried, a foam brush. I tried, spraying it on. It really didn't work. None of it did, because what ended up happening is the black bled through the paint onto the colors and everything. So what I decided to do is to go back, now that I had the black in there, is I went ahead and picked up some brushes, and I picked up some of the same color paints, the red, blues, and yellows in this Rust-Oleum enamel to repaint them, to paint over that, you know, the black runs that came out of it. And what I would suggest is, in the beginning, is not to spray paint, you know, just to hand paint every individual color. Now, I had posed this to you guys when I put out a earlier video, you know, of what was going on with the shop. And somebody, you know, a few good suggestions came back. A lot of people said because when Legos are put together, there's no space in between. You really don't need the black spacing or the curves cut in, because, you know, there's no space in between the Legos when they're snapped together, because this is supposed to represent, you know, a stack of Legos. Others suggested, you know, like paint all the colors and don't worry about cutting the curves in, but use the little thin pinstriping, you know, like for automobiles and everything. Put little black pinstripes on there if you want this effect. And all, you know, both are very good ideas, and both, you know, are you know, correct. When the Legos are snapped together, there is no black space. But, you know, since I already have my curves cut in, I'm not going to rebuild the legs. I'm just going to go ahead and repaint the colors, and we'll go from there.
Alright, now that the touch-up paint is done on the legs, we can go ahead and focus on the frame for the tabletop. We're going to start with cutting the miters on each end of the frame parts. A miter sled works well for this. Once the miters are cut and the frame parts are to their final length, we can go ahead and glue and nail them into place. And I'm using a micro pin nailer here just to hold the parts in place while the glue sets.
Alright, so now that I've got the outer frame on the tabletop on, I need to go ahead and repaint the outer frame. I went ahead and scuffed up the paint that I had on there, and I'm going to repaint it with the new red paint that I have that'll match the legs and stuff. But the top, there's a lot of things that you can do with this. One of the things that you can do is you can actually paint this with black chalkboard paint and make it a multi-purpose table. Or you can just, you know, paint it and just make it, you know, what it is, a Lego table. Get these positioned. We'll start with this one here. And I pre-drilled and countersunk these holes. Make sure that I'm squared up. Alright, so there is the basic Lego table, and again, I'll probably leave the bottom bare, but I am going to paint the top red, repaint it, and then we'll take, after I get it all painted and all, we'll take the top out of the plastic, or the little base plates. They're childproof. All right, now. There we go. And no, they're not adhesive backed, so that's perfect. And that just leaves a very small amount of play, so you can easily get these in and out. But there you go. That's the Lego table. And as I said, I want to go ahead and I want to touch up this paint. I went ahead and re-scuffed it up so the new layer of paint will stick to it very well. And once we get that done, we'll call this a done project. It's little Laney and his horse. All right, guys. Well, this wraps up the Lego table build. As I said, the top part of the table, these base plates, these 10 by 10 base plates, you can get them online, or you can get them. I got mine from Toys R Us if you have a Toys R Us in your area, or you can get them actually from Lego. They just drop right in, and now because of that, the bottom side of this table, or, you know, the top of the table under the base plates, you can actually paint that with chalkboard paint, create a multi-purpose table out of it, a little drawing table. You could do all kinds of things. I'm just gonna make this a Lego table for now, because fortunately enough, I live down the road from a small daycare, and I don't have any children or anything, so I'm actually going to take this and carry this table down to that daycare and donate it to them. And I think the kids will get really a lot of joy out of it, along with this 650 piece Lego set that I bought. And you know, I haven't played with Legos in a while. Putting together this little horse and little Laney and everything is kind of pretty cool. It brought back memories, so it was actually fun. But I'm a little too old to be keeping that, don't you think? Well, if you enjoyed it, please like down below. And if this is your first time watching one of my videos, please subscribe. If you followed me for a while, you know I've been away from content creation for quite some time, so this is kind of my first project for 2015. And I've got another project next week. I'm going to be releasing new videos every Friday, so please subscribe if you haven't. And again, like and comment down below if you enjoyed this project. Now next week, we're actually going to take, I'm going to take an old compressor that I have here, an old dual tank, inexpensive compressor from, I think, from Harbor Freight, that burned out on me, along with a vacuum press, pump, and some parts, and some plans from joewoodworker.com. And we're going to create a vacuum press for veneering and a vacuum clamping jigs. I'm mostly going to use that for the vacuum clamping jigs versus the veneering, and also to create a vacuum clamping table for the CNC. So I hope you stay tuned next week for that. And until next time, I'll see you soon.